Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I am an anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we're going to talk about the second and last eclipse of the year, the eclipse of October 28, which will be a partial lunar eclipse in Taurus. We're now entering the very heart of the fall season, since the event is going to take place with the sun, which has now entered Scorpio, and you can see that represented here. We are in the middle of fall. We will also relate Comet Nishimura, which has been the protagonist of the last eclipse on October 14. You can see it listed here, with another comet that is going to join the party, Encke's comet, which, unlike the first, is a periodic comet. We will also try to understand the spiritual relations that have been focusing lately around 20 degrees Libra. Now, we've seen that the solar eclipse of October 14th occurred in close conjunction with Comet Nishimura. You can see that in green here. Now, this alignment is very interesting because Rudolf Steiner said that both solar eclipses, and I want to underline solar eclipses, and non-periodic comets, and I really want to underline non-periodic comets, they both have the task of expelling negative astral. And in particular, solar eclipses, they expel it from the Earth, and non-periodic comets expel it from the solar system. And this means that we have here a joint effect of these two different types of expulsion, basically. But now, from October 22nd, another comet will become visible, and that is Encke's comet. And this comet on October 22nd will reach its perihelion. However, Encke's comet, unlike Nishimura, is a periodic comet. What does this mean? It means that it doesn't leave the solar system, but it remains inside of it, returning periodically. Now, in the picture here, you can see the orbit of Encke's comet, this white arrow. And as you can see, it is inside the orbit of Jupiter, represented here in orange. So, in particular, Encke's comet is returning very frequently. It is the comet actually returning most frequently, every three years and 4 months. Now, you will understand that compared to what we said about comets, this behavior is anomalous. And if the task of comets is basically that to expel the negative astral, the fact that a comet does not leave the solar system is not good, right? Now, why is that? Because this negative astral not only remains within the solar system, but it basically returns towards the Earth. And in fact, Rudolf Steiner tells us that this anomalous activity of periodic comets is the result of forces of hindrance. Basically, they're trying to subvert the harmony of the cosmos through comets, using the negative astral stored by them to bring noxious impulses to humanity. Basically, they return it back to us, right? Now, why do we care? We are interested because this activity of Comet Encke adds up to that of Comet Nishimura, to such an extent that we can truly consider the two activities in competition with each other. On one hand, we have Comet Nishimura collecting negative astral to expel it, whereas Encke's comet returns periodically bringing a negative impulse. Here you can see their alignment, which is really interesting. Now, on October 14, the day of the solar eclipse, Comet Nishimura was at 22 Libra. And on October 28th, the day of the lunar eclipse, Encke's comet is at 21 Libra. You see it here in green. This is Encke's comet. So we can understand how this area of the sky around 20 degrees Libra is truly dense with cosmic activity, and we can appreciate the providential intervention of Comet Nishimura even more now that we have seen this anomalous comet joining. Unfortunately, we do not know specifically the spiritual effects of Encke's comet. Elizabeth Vrede mentions this comet in her letters, but Steiner did not reveal its effect, unlike, for example, Halley's comet, which he indicated carries an impulse towards materialism. Anyway, nothing good, right? So let's now look at the chart of the eclipse, starting as always by the last changes in the sky. So on October 22nd, Mercury enters Scorpio. Here it is, our Mercury. And the following day, October 23rd, we have the Sun following him in Scorpio as well. On October 28th, the day of the eclipse, which is of course a full moon, the opposition between Mars and Jupiter that you can see here at 11 degrees of the Taurus Scorpio axis is going to perfect. And we also note that Mercury is in very close conjunction with Mars. Now, this chart is for October 28th, so we are approaching the Festival of the Dead, November 1st. And given the heavy astral atmosphere, I remind you to dedicate some spiritual thoughts to our beloved departed to help them. This is truly important for those who stand beyond the threshold and witness these events from the spiritual world. Of course, this is a lunar eclipse. What's the meaning of a lunar eclipse? Because this is very different from a solar eclipse. Now, being a lunar eclipse, as I mentioned, it is first of all a full moon, and it represents the peak of the lunation cycle that began with the last new moon. But we know that the last new moon of October 14 was a solar eclipse. And this means that the delicate process of karmic release that we have been talking about during the solar eclipse, which is the new moon, comes to a peak here because this lunar eclipse is basically the full moon of the same lunation. Now, regarding eclipses, Rudolf Steiner said that during a solar eclipse, harmful astral forces are expelled into the cosmos. We know that, right? Whereas during a lunar eclipse, such harmful astral forces present in the cosmos have access to the Earth again. And in particular, they can access the Earth through the cone of shadow that the Earth is projecting on the moon during the eclipse. You see the competition of the two comets here. So Comet Nishimura helping to expel evil, and Encke's comet, on the other hand, showing up precisely when negative astral forces from the cosmos have more access to the Earth because of a lunar eclipse. Now, if we look at the chart, we can see that the eclipse is located here at 5 degrees and 9 minutes Taurus, and it is happening in the starry image of Aries. And the moon is also in conjunction with the star Sheratan, and this is a bad star, unfortunately. It is a star of the nature of Saturn and Mars, the malefic planets, which in traditional lore can bring wounds and destruction through the elements, fire, water, but especially earthquakes. So Earth, since it is now located, the star, in an Earth sign. Now, the eclipse is ruled by Venus because the eclipse is taking place in Taurus. The lord of Taurus is, of course, Venus, and Venus is in Virgo. So the earth element significations are repeated. Venus in Virgo, on top of that, is in her fall, which indicates that the event will cause damage from a practical perspective, being Virgo, again, an earth sign. Now, the eclipse is happening on the north node, as you can see, which traditionally represents a little Jupiter. This means that we can expect excesses, actions that are basically too much to take place. And speaking of that, as you can see, the moon is in conjunction with Jupiter, which in turn is in conjunction with Uranus. And as we mentioned, Jupiter is in perfect opposition to both Mars and Mercury. We also note in this chart that the Sun-Moon opposition, this axis here, is closed by a T-square with Pluto. This is, of course, not a good thing, not at all. And by a Thales triangle, which is basically a trine, and a sextile by Saturn at 0 degrees of Pisces. Now, let's now talk about the meanings of this eclipse, starting from the physical perspective, because a lot is clearly happening here. So, eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis concern the management of natural resources, and both economic and financial aspects are involved. We also want to add cryptocurrencies given the presence of Uranus, which rules, of course, technology. So we can expect cryptocurrencies not to, to have a good moment here. And speaking of excesses, we can really expect some reckless move in these sectors, given that it is a North Node eclipse in conjunction with Jupiter, and Jupiter expands everything it touches and it brings exaggerations, and Uranus, which brings, as we know, sudden changes and revolutions. Now, the presence of the T-square with Mars and Pluto, because both are involved, of course, it is about power struggles, and we saw that during the last solar eclipse, power struggles, because Pluto is the planet of power, especially Pluto in Capricorn, and of course Mars brings struggles. Now, these power struggles are going to be seasoned, so to speak, with lies, given the presence of Mercury. And whenever Mercury is in conjunction with malefic planets, it tends to become a little bit more malefic. However, the sextile and trine of Saturn create enough disenchantment, enough disillusionment not to believe in these lies, which in a certain sense are expected. We don't buy them anymore, basically, because Saturn in Pisces is like making a reality check. I remind you that this event, the eclipse, is in conjunction with the star Sheratan, which can bring destruction through the elements and earthquakes, always looking at the event from the physical perspective. Now, concerning the soul, our need for security and stability can be shaken by this event, because this is, first of all, a full moon in Taurus, and Taurus usually brings this stability, but in this case, given that it is an eclipse and given the presence of both Uranus and Jupiter, we could feel that we are missing the ground under our feet. Instead of being ensnared in power games outside of us, we could instead see internal shadows emerging within. And this is especially the case because Mercury and Mars are both in Scorpio. And here they lead us to analyze Mercury and to explore our unconscious with courage, given, of course, by Mars. And we have an opportunity to process these shadows. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, we have seen in detail the clash between the impulses of the two comets, but we can trace a similar clash regarding the quality of thinking, which is involved here. On the one hand, the lunar eclipse causes these negative influences to penetrate the Earth, as we've said. In particular, Steiner shows us that it is the quality of thinking that is darkened in an Ahrimanic way. And to this Ahrimanic thinking, we see another quality of thinking contrasting it, because the full moon, which will be eclipsed, shines next to Jupiter, and both stand out against the background of the starry image of Aries. And not only does the constellation of Aries represent the head of the cosmic human being, the Adam Kadmon, but in astrosophy, it is the constellation linked to the Christ as the mystic lamb and to the spirits of wisdom. We also find Jupiter, the planet of wisdom. For those who know these associations, it is a powerful image of ancient sun, basically, of old sun. So this means that we can find a quality here of spiritualized thought, spiritualized thinking. So the darkened Ahrimanic thought and the thought spiritualized by wisdom compete here for what? For the planet Uranus. Uranus being the planet of collective thinking. In short, it is a real spiritual battle taking place in the heavens. Now, here you can see the points where the eclipse will be strongest in the world. We can really take into account these lines because the red line, it is the ascendant line, and the yellow line, it is the descendant line. Whereas the green line is the midheaven line, and the IC line, you can see that here in light blue. And if we compare this chart with the actual path of the eclipse, we can see where the event will be most powerful. And as you can see, the eclipse will be basically visible from almost all over the world. Thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.